Break out the crackers. This is the cheesiest thing ever, but automation is not a destination. It is a journey.
Just a small town boy, born and raised in North Detroit.
And that really is true, because you never get there. You never get to automation. It's just a thing you do, and you constantly do it, and it's a very iterative process. My name is Joseph Mixon, and I am an automation architect at AdviseX.
Hi, I'm Joe Clark, and I'm our Director of Cloud Architecture here at AdviseX.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about automation and why it's really important not to try and boil the ocean. I think everybody knows that automation is a thing that they need, it's a thing they want, and a lot of times that can be kind of overwhelming if you don't have the right skill set for that, or if you don't have the right tools, just not really knowing where to start, feeling like you just got to do everything at once. That's a really overwhelming feeling. So we're going to try and talk some sense into that and talk about just maybe a better approach than trying to do everything.
Yeah, I think that's great, Joseph. And as we talk through it, there's some customers that feel really overwhelmed, like you mentioned, when they're staring at this massive sea of manual tests that they do day in and day out. Where do you even start to have the conversation, right? How do you even start to say, well, if I automate this task and I do it in the wrong way, I might be throwing work away that I'm never going to use and never actually going to see again. And there's a little bit of nervousness around that from an automation perspective. So how do we really combat that? And how do we work through identifying a great place to start?
Yep, so I think low-hanging fruit, the best place to start is usually going to be somewhere where you can get a quick, easy win. Take something that maybe a process you already know a lot about, so that you don't have a lot of guesswork, and go with that and try and just get a quick out of the gate win. One of the phrases that I've coined that I'm particularly proud of is the best place to start with automation is somewhere. You just have to start somewhere. You just got to do it. You can't just talk about it and think about it, but find a place and just pick it and go with it. You know what? If it doesn't go great, that's cool. You're going to learn a lot along the way, and you'll be able to take what you learn and try and automate the next task and be even better at it.
Yeah, so I know when we're talking about automation, there's basically a couple different ways that we can look at it. There's IT operations side of the house in most organizations, right? People that keep the lights on, people that keep things running, making sure servers stay online, services are available. Their job is to build it and then keep it running from an infrastructure perspective. We also see on the development side of the house that there's folks that say, my job is to build new things. My job is not to make it run. And the needs from an automation perspective sometimes dovetail and sometimes they don't. So when you're thinking about that, and someone's saying, hey, I want to boil the ocean, it's almost like someone saying, I need to automate everything that every organization in my IT group needs, right? Like I need to automate everything start to finish. And that's kind of where that boil the ocean thing starts to come in, right? So what are your thoughts on that from like that sort of dotted line down the middle?
Yeah, developers, we love developers as ops people, but automation is a big part of what they do. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that automation is a good way to bring different teams together, because your developers are really good at scripting and coding. Your infrastructure guys are really good at understanding the underlying components that your business runs on. And being able to bring those guys together and get them on the same page can really it can help build a better culture, but then you can get synergies as far as the things you can accomplish. Being able to, powers combined are a lot better than just the powers separated and trying to do their own thing.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. And operations automation needs, it's funny that we see a lot of companies that were born out of infrastructure side of the house saying, hey, look, we're doing infrastructure as code, when they're talking about a new way of deploying servers and storage. And we're like, well, maybe. Do you really need infrastructure as code to deploy physical hardware? Let me answer that question. If you do, you're at a scale where, okay, maybe you better be running your own private cloud if you need to literally build out physical nodes in an automated fashion, as opposed to just saying, hey, I know how much resource I need and can fill that, right? Versus leveraging automation to gain value on top of a platform, right? Now that's a little bit more valuable, because here's the honest truth, Joseph, right? I've learned this being in the business on, the ops side and the resale side, right? You can't just snap your fingers and have an expanded cluster. It doesn't happen that way in a private cloud. You need to say, hey, either I bought more than I needed, or I'm leveraging a service that can scale out elastically, right? Elastically is not a word. I can leverage a service that scales out, right? And just is able to handle more workload that I throw at it. So when we're thinking about automation of an infrastructure platform versus on top of an infrastructure platform, where do you see people starting? Does it have nothing to do with the tech and has everything to do with their familiarity with the technology, or what do you see?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, people are going to gravitate towards what they're familiar with. And I think I'm answering your question correctly. If not, steer me back. And by the way, I think elasticy should be a word.
Well, good. I'm not by myself then. All right.
So, there you go. So I think people are going to start where they're most comfortable. They're going to start with the tools that they're most comfortable with. They're going to start in the environments they're most comfortable with. So, whether that's platform or it's public cloud or it's private cloud or it's just their application or, whatever it may be, they're going to find a way to make the little menial tasks that they do easier, more consistent, faster. And that's kind of the grassroots approach to automation, is you start just building up little things in the world that you know and you understand very well. The problem you run into in that is you end up with little pockets of knowledge everywhere, and you end up with people redoing work because this person might not know that the other person has already written a script that can do that task, and so he wrote another script himself. And on top of that, you have other teams who just have no access to what a separate team may have done. So the solution to those problems is some kind of an automation platform. You got to have something where you just say, hey, you know what, get everybody together. We're all going to gather around the table together, and we're going to decide that this is where we're going to build our automation from. And what that allows you to do is consolidate all of that knowledge. It allows you to then take everything, all that consolidated knowledge, and make it available to the other teams. You can make it consumable through some kind of a marketplace or a catalog. And that just really ramps up the power of automation when you can start. But again, you've got to start somewhere. So you've got to start with those individual tasks that but be focused on how you can start bringing those things together before it gets too unwieldy, and otherwise you're going to end up with a wild, wild west, and it's going to be a little more difficult to tame later on.
Right, and what do we think is like the tipping point there? Because everyone's knows that as there's different skill sets within a different organization, there's different ways that they're going to go at automating a problem. Someone that gravitates towards Microsoft operating systems, they're using PowerShell. Someone that's on the network side, they like Ansible, they like more command line tools, right? Someone that is on the developer side, they're like, hey, I've got a code pipeline, or I've got this, this particular, a Circle CI, some sort of a dev pipeline technology that I use to go through and build and push my different, iterations of code to prod, or different environments. So at what point do we say, all right, we've been building automation in 4 different directions. Let's pull it together. Because we see people automating their own tasks and not pulling it all together and saying hey, let's orchestrate what we're trying to do here between these workflows. I mean, what's that tipping point, really?
Yeah, as soon as you can do it, and really it has to come from kind of from up high and from down low. So you've got to have senior management bought into, we need to do this, because sometimes that's the only way that you can get everybody to listen. Just say, hey, you know what, we have an order that we have to come together on the same table and consolidate our knowledge and our expertise. But then also, from the bottom up, I find that you'll often have different people on each team, like maybe 1 or 2 people on the networking team, 1 or 2 people on the storage team, 1 or 2 people on, just the ops team, the developer team. And they're all really they really like automation. They really like coding, they like developing, they like making things, faster, consistent, better. And those guys can kind of build this center of excellence, or whatever you want to call it, this automation team, where you have representatives from each individual disparate team. so that nobody's getting left out. The network team is taken care of and everybody understands their concerns because there's a representative from that team there on this this grander automation team. And I find that can really it can spark a cultural change. Now, culture is not a thing you can buy. There's no SKU for that. You can't swipe your card to get culture. But centering people around automation and around a common task, a common goal, can really start to build the kind of synergies that all companies want around different teams to start building a better, more collaborative culture.
Oh man, I better go read the manual. I thought culture shipped with every version of the vCloud Suite Enterprise Plus. Dang it all.
It's an add-on. You got to pay extra for that.
I better go check with the manual. So that's probably in a hidden page of the publications. No, that makes total sense, Joseph. And thinking through that, there is really a difference between maybe my side, right, being the director of cloud architecture. I've got cloud architects that work on my team that are saying, we're designing services and aligning services to meet business needs, regardless of where they are in a private cloud, a public cloud, right? Connecting those two together, saying we're trying to solve that problem higher in the stack. Another way that you can be a cloud architect is literally to be the one that is building that private cloud, right? Saying like, okay, well, not only am I like instantiating services here, like in a private cloud arena, but I'm saying, what do I need in order to be classified as a cloud? I need dynamic network controls, right? I need to be able to say, hey, I need to be able to get programmatic access to network. Real hard to have a private cloud without programmatic access to network, right? I got to have scalability, right? I got to have a measured service so I can say, look, here's my contract between me and you, Mr. and Mrs. Developer. Here's what we're going to look at, right? So it's just kind of cool to say private cloud and public cloud, you look at the two together, what do they have in common? I know that I don't have to go to Gary's Cube to get something done. I go there and I'm like, you know what? If I want to, I could probably go to someone's cube and have them help me spin it up. But if I want programmatic access to resource as a developer, I know I can get it. If I want to go to a catalog and select from a shopping cart, I know I can go and do that and get a particular flavor of a virtual machine running somewhere, right? And I think that's really like the difference there, right? I mean, any thoughts on that, on maybe like the differences with cloud architect there?
Yeah, so there definitely are two different skill sets. One when it comes to actually building the cloud environment, and then another which would be building something on top of that, whether it's a platform or an application or whatever. And I think both of them are important, and both of them have plenty of places where you can automate things. And a lot of times the two don't really understand one another. The people who are building the cloud don't really know what's running on top of it, and the people who build things on the cloud don't really understand what's happening, behind the scenes. So yeah, in both places there's a lot of room for automation, and there's a lot of room too for some teams to come together and kind of understand one another a little better.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely, Joseph. I think that when you think through what people want to be doing, it's extremely important. Do you want to be worrying about physical infrastructure and locations, like power, cooling, pipe? Like, do you really want to worry about those three things? And if the answer is no, I'm like, well, that's something that you might be able to get like from either a public cloud provider or, a different cloud service from a provider that's going to handle a lot of those things for you. What brings value to the business? When we're automating, right, at Advisix, we're asking ourselves, what are the things, to your point, can we do that bring the most value in the quickest fashion? What's burning down your house? You're doing something right now by hand that you cannot stand. Right? And if you try to do all those things at the same time, you're going to fall over, right? It's going to be saying, hey, we need a little bit of focus and a little bit of intentionality behind what we're doing. And that's certainly something advisors can bring to the table for customers that are out there, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, really wherever you are. So whether you're, at the very beginning of this process where you just know that there are a lot of things that need to be automated, you don't really know where to start, you don't know what tools to use. If you're there, or maybe you're further along in that journey and you already have a centralized platform and you are building automation, but you just need some expertise. You need somebody who has seen 50 different organizations and have gathered and procured best practices from all of them. and anywhere in between, we really are there to step in. And this is, so break out the crackers. This is the cheesiest thing ever, but automation is not a destination. It is a journey, and that really is true, because you never get there. You never get to automation. It's just a thing you do, and you constantly do it, and it's a very iterative process. So regardless of what task you automate, there's always going to be a way to make it better. There's always going to be a way to make it more efficient. Maybe to make it more consumable. There's always room for improvement, and I think that's a really important thing for people to understand up front, is that, again, it's not a spot you land, it's a thing that you start, and it pays such great dividends as you continue along that road.
Sure, and I think that's a great point, Joseph, is saying, as we look backwards at the work that we've done, metrics are our ally. To be able to say, this is how many deployments we did by hand, thus saving this much hours from a sysadmin perspective. This is how much we did. Here's the number of tickets we closed that had no human interface. They were opened, fixed, and closed without any human ever touching a keyboard.
The best ticket in the world is the one you never see, right?
That's right. You never see, but it gets fixed. It fixes itself, yeah. Right? I mean, the self-healing tickets, the amazing stuff that folks can actually have that in reality, right? So I think your points are spot on, Joseph. And whether or not someone is at a point where they're trying to say, hey, I'm just trying to prove the value of automation. I don't have that past history of saying, look at the thousands of things we've done in automation fashion, saving us, this umpteen hours of, physical labor time. If you don't have that, I mean, one of the things that Advisix we're happy to do is help come in and show that, right? What's burning down your house? Let's pick it apart. Let's draw that process out. Let's get it in a Visio, and let's start to pick it apart and say, all right, look, this is how much time it's really taking. This is your process. This is not Advisix coming in and saying, we're going to do amazing things. This is us coming in and saying, this is your process, right? Everybody knows that sometimes changing a process is going to be part of the equation, right? If your approval process takes a signature from every person in IT, and that's just not going to change, that's policy. That's not technology at all, right? So sometimes it's just saying, hey, we got to maybe make a change to process here to get a little bit more throughput from our IT organization. And that's what senior leadership should be watching and listening for, because that should be their goal. I want my IT department to do more faster. I want to get to those outcomes faster. I want to deliver service with more nines. And you can't focus on those mission critical things when you're doing the boring stuff that you need to do to literally keep the engine turning. So
that's spot on, man. No, everything you said, I'm just nodding in agreement. I think that it is important to have those metrics you talked about, because senior leadership, that's really what they care about. They care about numbers. They don't really understand that it takes you this big of a headache and this much time to do this task. They just care about the end result. And Advisix being able to come in and actually show and quantify the value of automation, both beforehand by analyzing your process, and then after automation has been implemented, to show that improvement is just it really is huge. And to comment on your point about the process itself is, you can automate any process. If it's a crappy process, it's just going to be a crappy process that's faster, and it's crappy every time, because that's how it started out. But a big side benefit to automation is that a lot of times you get in and you realize that people don't really have a standard process. You're like, well, we kind of do it like this, and then so-and-so, I think they do this over here, but I'm not really sure. And there's no documentation, there's no standardization around that, which leads to inconsistent outputs every time this thing happens. Whereas when you automate it, part of that process is to really understand it from start to finish, and offer advice on where you can make improvements. Maybe cut down on the amount of time it takes to bounce ideas from one team to another. However it is, you want to come in and look at the process holistically and figure out ways that you can improve it, and then automate it after you have the process nailed down.
Right, for sure. So in conclusion, I would say that automation is important, and getting started somewhere, that's kind of the precipice of getting something done and saying hey, we've got to start with something. So, and I think the important part to take home is that anybody can get started somewhere. If you're a network, you can get started with saying, what are the things I do every day? What's burning down my house? Is it provisioning VLANs? Is it switch provisioning? Is it tagging? Is it management of firewall rules? What are the things that I can do to say, this is what's burning down my house? If you're in storage, what's burning down your house and being safe. Like maybe someone's picking up the phone going, hey, can you extend that LUN like for the 13th time like this quarter because logs filled up. You know, there's a ton of different ways that you can do this. In compute, are you provisioning, you know, virtual machines? Database world, are you bringing things up? Are you failing things over? Are you taking backups? Are you snapping servers? Where like these are all examples where we're saying, yeah, this is stuff that I just want to make sure it's done. And I'm like, it's no offense to the people that are capable of doing the work, but from my perspective, I feel a little bit better when I place an Amazon order knowing full well that it's not going to someone that's literally staring at an order queue going, well, now I have to do a thing. I'm like, I just feel better knowing that it's like, it's going to make its way through the pipe, because I'm like, I don't have to worry about it. Whatever system they got in place, like hopefully they're going to have some robots deliver it to somebody and get this, you know, ready to rock. If you've seen some of their packaging and automation facilities, breathtaking. I'm like, it is nothing less than a miracle that they are able to say, hey, we can deliver a lot of these resources in less than 48 hours of order placement, right? So a lot of it's logistics, but it's a ton of automation behind that too. So just really cool to know that that's what's driving a huge amount of value for a large amount of retail companies. But it's not just retail that can see the value and bring the benefit of that. I mean, one more thing I'll say before shutting up, I guess, is one of our consultants, Mitch Brown, brought a really cool analogy to me. He said, hey, do you really want your fire department 100% utilized? Mm-hmm. No, you don't. Because if your fire department's 100% utilized, they have no time to respond to an urgent need. Mm-hmm. So how in the world do you manage that? You say, I need this much buffer time to be able to adequately respond and shift my attention to where it is needed most, right? And in hospitals, we do this all the time. I worked in-house at a hospital for a long time. It's this constant process of triaging, right? And saying, we have a lot of folks, like a lot of intensive care units are actually filled to 90% most of the time. And they're saying that because, why? They're like, because we triage. We're constantly in this shape of triaging, right? But we leave enough capacity so that we can have response for emergency and response for things that require immediate action. And when you're busy doing things that bring no value and are just IT for the sake of being IT, it's where you get the bad name of being a cost center. And I remember the first place I worked in IT that our CIO had some really cool thoughts about how she perceived IT. Her thought was, I see IT as a strategic asset, not a cost center. And I love that thought process, because it just really says, you know what? You're seeing the people and the processes and the technology underneath your organization as an asset to drive value in your organization. And how can you do that? Automation, right? So that's a huge part of it. You know, try to have a cloud without automation. Let me know how it goes, right?
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
Hey there, Joseph Mixon here. If you like this video and you want to see more, please be sure to give it a like and click that subscribe button below.